There is a lot of fear about how AI is going to change the workplace, and it will, but the fear is misplaced. Why? Because the workplace changes all the time. Everything that we think of as the way work has always been is less than 100 years old. There are people alive today that remember child labor being legal, that remember there being no restrictions on the length of the workday or the work week, and remember working from home having a much different definition than it does now. So let's take a look at a lot of the things that we feel like have been around forever that haven't been around that long to make note at how quickly and often the workplace actually changes so that when we think about the changes that are coming, we realize we can handle it because we've been dealing with it our whole careers. We cannot talk about the modern workplace without at first talking about this man, Henry Ford. Ford created the Ford Motor Company in 1903, and though he didn't invent the automobile that was patented in Germany in the mid 1800s, he did create a lot of the mass production techniques that allowed cars to be affordable. And also, those techniques set the standard for modern industry in the early 1900s. Now, Henry Ford is a problematic historical figure. Google him at your own risk. But a lot of the things that we take for granted about the modern workplace started with good old Henry. Ford introduced the 8-hour workday in 1914. He introduced the 40-hour work week in 1926. And he pushed for 2-day weekends in the mid 1920s. These things were great for Ford workers, but the rest of the country didn't see these types of reforms until 1940. That was because of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, was signed into law by FDR in 1938, and then there were some amendments that went in 1940. The law sets the basic ground rules for paid work. It created federal rules for minimum wage, overtime, child labor, and how employers track hours and pay. So that was when we got the 8-hour workday, the 40-hour work week. And then also we got the 2-day weekend as a result of the institution of the 40-hour work week. And this is the part you won't believe. Child labor was not officially outlawed until 1938. Let that sink in for a second. Think about it. Those four things that we all assume have been around forever have been around since World War II. And there are other things also, like paid sick leave and paid vacation, both of which started in the 1950s, and neither of which are currently codified by any sort of federal law. And then there's employer health insurance, which also started becoming offered in the 1950s, but wasn't law until 2010. Thanks, Obama. And women as equal members of the workforce? 1963, the Equal Pay Act mandated equal pay for equal work. And then Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned sex-based discrimination in hiring, firing, and promotion. And those are just the things that we take for granted as having been around forever. There have been evolutions to the workplace in our collective lifetimes, specifically the gig economy, which started in the 2010s, and as of this taping, still do not have any kind of federal legal protections around that kind of work. And then finally, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have remote work, which in 2020 went from a very niche 6% to a whopping 36% almost overnight, and still makes up a considerable amount of the workforce. Now AI is here and the evolutions continue. So let's take a look at ways that AI is starting to and will continue to shape our workplace going forward. First up is AI as an everyday tool, and we're already kind of seeing this, just like spreadsheets and email were considered standard for most roles, AI is going to be that very, very soon. Next up is AI training and skilling. And some companies and schools are already getting ahead of this. Just like with computer literacy in the 90s, this stuff is coming. Next up are the emergence of hybrid roles like prompt engineer or AI content editor. We're already seeing these pop up on LinkedIn. And finally, our AI worker protections. Some companies are starting to go ahead and get guidelines out there now, but federal regulation of this is coming sooner rather than later. And how do we know the regulations are coming? Because this is the pattern. A new thing gets introduced, it gets adopted, and then eventually it gets regulated. We've seen it from the 8-hour a day work week all the way up through all these new AI wrinkles that we're getting. This is the pattern. AI is not the end of work. It's just the next chapter. And this is why I went through this exercise with you guys, because I go through this exercise with myself often. When the world gets scary for one reason or another, I look back to the past and say, are we really living in the worst times, or have things always been kind of bleeped up? And this is just the latest iteration of it, that we will not only persevere through, but we will become stronger because of. And I hope that that's what this video has done for you. If you have been concerned about the nature of work changing because of AI, I hope this has helped you get your head on straight about what's coming. So, as always, I appreciate the view. Would love a like and a subscribe if you are so motivated. And thank you so much, and we will talk soon.